So in this video, I really wanted to break down what makes a good conversation. If you're like me and you meet lots of different types of people and you're constantly having conversations, it can be really hard to have consistently good quality conversations where you're asking the right amount of questions, you're engaging with the person, and you really are developing like a good connection rather than like having awkward small talk. I know in the UK, having small talk is something that people really, really are scared of. And um, as somebody who's like quite extroverted and quite a social person, I find this bonkers. I can't believe that there are all these people who are going around the world not having the kinds of conversations that really like make life fun. Um, in this video, I'll break down some of my tips and techniques and how to have a good conversation with anybody. But also, I'd love to hear from you. So if you have ideas or suggestions, please drop them in the comments below. Okay, so let's get started. Um, so I'm the kind of person who goes out and I meet lots of different kinds of people a lot. I have a lot of different friends from different places, from different areas. Some of them non-native English speakers. That's like my number one rule. My absolute first rule of how to have a good conversation is to first of all acknowledge what the other person is saying. I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. Quite often I'll overhear conversations with people, or I'll listen to something that someone is saying, and sometimes people will say things like, "Oh, I've had a really rough day," and the other person would be like, "Cool, so," and they'll just move on. And that can be so annoying in a conversation, because if you've just told somebody something and they haven't even like clocked it, or even if they've clocked it, if they haven't like acknowledged it, it can be really disheartening for the other person in the conversation, and it really stops the conversation right there and then. So, the first thing that I would say is when you're having a conversation with somebody, if they say anything, acknowledge what they've said. Always acknowledge what the other person is saying, and then give them that time to like understand that you have clocked the information that they've given you. So that would be something that I think is a really easy thing to get started with, is when you're having a conversation with anyone, male, female, um, anyone in any circumstance, like just acknowledge what the other person is saying. That's always a good place to start. Okay, the next thing is to follow up that with a question. So again, if somebody was to tell you, I've had a really busy week, and then you, why has it been so busy? And ask people to elaborate. Oftentimes, when people are telling you something and they leave it open ended, when people are like saying any statement about themselves, it's because that's information that they want to share with you. So you're not prying. As much as possible, try and um, ask them an open-ended question that they can answer to the depth that they feel comfortable. If sometimes, they might say something that you just simply can't ask a follow-up question on, just acknowledge it and say, wow, that sounds really difficult, or that sounds really tough, and move on. But always make sure that you give the person the respect of hearing what they have to say. Okay, the next thing that I'd want to say is listen and respond to people. So, um, when people are talking, sometimes when people are easy talkers, they're naturally good at speaking about themselves, or they're naturally good at like providing updates. Listen to what they're saying. Quite often people will say things like they'll talk about a particular issue in their lives, or they'll talk about a particular person. They might be complaining about a boss or a sibling or a partner, or they might be telling you something that you just don't know about. When they're talking, pay attention. And this takes a little bit of practice, but I am amazed at the number of times that I have had a conversation with someone and you can see their eyes have glazed over and they are not paying attention. And it's so rude, and it's also so disheartening for the person who is talking, because the other person knows you're not listening, you know they're not listening. It's kind of a waste of everybody's time and energy. For a minute, try and turn off the monologue in your brain, close it down and pay attention. Really practice focusing on what the other person is saying and hear them out. I use this technique all the time. It does take a little bit of practice to be able to listen to someone carefully in the way that's helpful to them, but it does get easier. So the more you do it, the more you'll find that it's easier to do. When you're sharing something with someone, it's very, very helpful to not dump your trauma on someone. Like, don't just go in and be like, oh, here are my problems. We've all done it. It's not a nice thing to do. When you're sharing something with someone, try and break down what you're saying into making it really clear and easy for the other person. Try as much as possible to figure out where they're coming from. Don't give them heaps of information that just won't make sense. Okay, and another thing that I think is actually really important and worth mentioning over here is when you're talking to someone, don't give them advice. The number of times I have met people and people who, like, I've just kind of casually seen or I've bumped into, or maybe people sometimes who've known me from like a previous life who come up to me and be like, oh, you've put on a lot of weight. You should do this new exercise technique. Nobody needs your advice. People are fine unless I actually ask for your opinion and ask for you to give me advice. Don't give advice. Like, as much as possible, when people are talking, listen to them, hear them out. Um, Try and ask them more follow-up questions. Take an active interest in what they're saying, but don't try and give them advice because nobody actually wants it. And quite often, it just makes the conversation really awkward because people will be like, yeah, 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 and then they'll just do it if they want, anyways. A lot of people give advice. Just remember that when you're talking to someone, to try and make it clear, simple, and accessible for them to understand what you're saying. So, um, I've noticed this a lot, especially in like academic circles. Don't use really big language. Don't use like big words to try and make the other person think you're smart. The way to make somebody understand that you're smart is to actually make things clear and simple and make people understand that what you're saying, you're saying because you think it could be useful to them. Don't show off about how intelligent you are. Don't talk about all the wonderful things you've done. It's weird. Nobody wants to talk to somebody who's pretentious. Nobody wants to talk to somebody who thinks they're the bee's knees. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Um, and then finally, one of my favorite things to do with someone is if you're having a conversation with somebody and you don't really know how to talk to them, is try and reflect back what they're saying to you. So if somebody says something like, um, I just really don't know what to do, I'm torn between these two choices, just reflect that back at them and say, wow, it sounds like you're really struggling between the two choices. What do you think is making it so hard? Give them a question, but then reflect what they're saying back to you as much as possible. Quite often you'll find that people want that support, they want to be heard, and they want to like have a mirror held up to what they're saying. So if you can like help them do that, it makes you a really good conversationalist. It makes it possible for you to have conversations with people in a way that's like not smarmy and weird, that's helpful, engaging, and helps the other person understand where you're coming from. Okay, so those are my top tips for having a good conversation. A lot of people I know, including my husband, really, really struggle with having conversations with people they don't know. This could be just because you're a bit shy or because you don't really know what to say to someone. But the more you practice speaking to different kinds of people, the easier it gets to talk to different types of people. And the more things you learn, the more perspectives you get, the more you grow and develop as a person. So thanks for watching. I hope you've had a nice time and learned something fun. If you'd like me to do another video on anything that you find interesting, please drop me a comment in the messages below and I'll have a look at them. In the meantime, have a great week. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Samira, and on this channel I share practical life advice, life hacks, conversations on our connected world, and personal development, inner work, productivity, that kind of thing. So please follow along. It's quite fun actually. What am I doing?